My name is Michael Scott Shannon. I'm a radio programmer and radio DJ. I'm standing in 333 Meadowlands Parkway in Secaucus, New Jersey. Why? Because this is where the story began.
Serving the universe.
Good morning, everybody.
The top of the Empire State Building.
It's on the air everywhere.
WHTZ. We're going from worst to first.
Z100, babe.
This is what they mean by making a spectacle of yourself.
Hot hits.
Hot rocket.
We have gone from worst to first.
They went from worst to first. The winning formula is wild and wacky.
Happy birthday.
You made my monkey wiggle.
Z100.
Z100, New York.
Every kid dreams of being heard on the radio. I was driving across the Driscoll Bridge in New Jersey on my way back to my parents' house, and I was alone. And it came on, and I started to drive fast and turn it up louder, hoping to get pulled over just so you could tell the cop, that's me on the radio.
The summer of 1983. Back then, the radio ratings came in on the Associated Press newswire. People would stand around the machine waiting for it to come off.
If we had taken this format, if we had taken this show to Des Moines, Iowa, or to someplace out in Kentucky, we would have had a great shot.
I see the #1 station, big R&B station, WRKS. I didn't expect to be in the top 10, so I looked down in the next 10. No Z100.
But in New York, we're going against the best.
And I get down to like 40 and 45.
The biggest radio stations that have reputations that went back 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
There's stations from Philadelphia that are leaking into New Jersey, but just had enough listeners to get in the ratings.
A good rating is somewhere like over 5, close to a 10.
And at number 51, WHTZ.
We had a 2. A 2 rating is lousy.
We were in last effing place. I went home that night, couldn't sleep. My wife said, "What's wrong?" We suck, that's what's wrong.
In 1983, I was Vice President of Radio Programming for Mallrite Communications Group, based in Cleveland, Ohio. Mallrite's chairman and CEO was Milton Maltz. One day he popped his head in my office and said, "Jim, we're going to buy a new radio station for New York City, just outside the city limits, just across the river in New Jersey." And that radio station had the approval of the FCC to move its tower and transmitter to the Empire State Building. Now it was time to go find just the right person to oversee the programming, the talent, and the marketing of the radio station. This person had to be just a little bit screwed up because they were going to take on the biggest broadcasting companies in the world, and that person was in Tampa, Florida.
Shannon on the Q-Zoo, final chapter.
Today, it was a time to cry. Scott Shannon was leaving.
Some may say goodbye and good riddance.
New York was calling.
But for thousands others, it was an emotional, sad farewell.
I really think that you're something else.
Come on, man, perk up.
As co-keeper of the Q-Zoo, Scott Shannon bid final farewell to radio fans.
Well, let's laugh right now, okay?
He indeed will be missed, and we'll miss him.
Boom, I'm out of here.
New York City was an impossibly saturated media market. It is the toughest market in the world to break into. If you want to be on radio in New York, particularly in that era, you were facing the giants of the business, the Goliaths of the business.
This guy kept calling me from Cleveland, and I had a stack of those pink callback pads, So then I got a call from a buddy of mine who is a program director, and he says to me, "Why don't you call these people back in Cleveland? I just interviewed up there." Then I realized that they kept asking me questions about you. I said, "Well, why don't you just call him?" And they said, well, we did, but he won't return our calls.
And to come from the South with a, kind of a funky accent, I don't even know what Scott's accent is. It was really a daunting task, to say the least.
There were a lot of golden retrievers in New York in the early 80s. You had the traditional talk radio audience listen to John A. Gambling on WOR, and you still had WBLS and WKTU being very popular. You had WPLJ, which was a rock station with some pop tendencies. You had WNBC, which had Imus in the morning, Stern in the afternoon, and really top 40 music in between. But those personalities were so powerful that they overwhelmed the image of the station.
Well, to understand what was going on in 1983, you really have to go back to the mid to late 1970s, because a lot of very significant changes in the media marketplace took place. See, in 1974, when I started at WPLJ, which became New York's dominant rock station on FM, rock had a very broad definition. It encompassed Led Zeppelin, but also Carly Simon and Carole King and Joni Mitchell and the great Motown catalog. Then came 1977. Then came disco. And the rock community fragmented.
Basically what wound up happening at radio, from the way I saw it, was they could extract one lane that they thought was really working, and they could just format a whole show or a station like that.
I get up there and I got this really carefully prepared presentation, so I could pass them out to all the goobers in the room. And I play a tape of our morning show.
The Q-Zoo in the morning.
This is Elmer Smudpucker.
Shannon, Cleveland, Brooks, and Ted Webb. Billy Bob Finley Johnson's the maintenance man. Good morning from the Q Morning Zoo.
And finally, there's one wiseacre, and he says, well, what makes you think that you're ready for the biggest market in the country? Then I just snapped. I don't need this job. And I threw my little booklet at him, and I got up and I walked out. So I'm at the elevator bank, and out comes Mr. Mallwright. He's the guy who owns the company. And he said, where you going? I said, I'm going home. I don't want to work for that idiot. So he said, no. You're our guy. And I said, I got to make my plane back. He said, oh, but you're still going to take the job, right? I said, yeah, I'll take the job. Then I realized I don't know anything about New York.
Serving Middle Tennessee with 5,000 watts of fun power. This is 7:30 in the nitty-gritty capital city.
I originally met Scott in 1972 when he was Super Shan at MAK in Nashville.
Super Shan, WMAK.
I didn't know if it was him or Elvis, because he tried to look exactly like Elvis Presley. He had big hair, that big chin, and he was bigger than life. Privately, Scott is very demure and very quiet. And as soon as that microphone goes on, he's on.
Scott's passion is being on the air. He will do anything to be on the air. Scott was hired to be program director of WPGC in Washington, D.C. The Marriotts own the radio station. No disrespect to the Marriotts, but they were Mormons. They are Mormons. They're still Mormons. The Marriotts didn't like him on the air. They basically said to him, we don't want you on the air. Scott was driven out of WPGC because he wants to be on the air more than he wants to program a radio station.
WPGC, FM and AM Morningside. It's 12:01. It's good afternoon.
The day he left to interview in Tampa, he drove his car to the Baltimore Washington airport, and he gets on the plane and he has the interview. A few days later, he calls me and he said, hey, I go, what's up? I think I left my car at the airport. I go, okay, were you like in short-term parking? No, I think I left it like up against the curb in front of the airport. And if I did, the keys are in it. And he was hired for the morning show, which was his dream. And that's when he started the Zoo concept.
Good morning from the Q Morning Zoo. Rise and shine with folks like you. Good morning.
So I teamed up with another guy by the name of Cleveland Wheeler. And I told him I had this plan to do this show called The Morning Zoo. and it had DJ shenanigans, craziness, parody songs, crazy phone calls, just kind of a free-for-all morning show that sounded like nothing was planned. 2.5 years later, we had the highest morning show ratings in the country.
Shannon has taken Q105 and made it the #1 station in Tampa. He's won an award for being the top DJ in the country.
Scott and I were working in Tampa, Florida. He calls me into his office one day and he goes, nobody can know this. And he proceeds to tell me that he's developing a brand new station called Z100 in New York City, and would I like to join him?
I go in and I tell my manager, I'm gonna have to go. I gotta go to New York. I signed a contract. What? What are you doing? You're #1. You're making good money and you just met a girl. I said, I'm gonna try to see if she'll go with me.
We weren't living together. We were dating, maybe a year. I traveled to New York for business, which was great, and I loved to come to New York and go shop, and I loved everything that New York City had to offer, but it was not an aspiration to move there and live there. I was a Southern girl. Grew up in Louisville and then was living in Florida.
She did agree to go with me on my first trip to New York City, and that is another story.
We flew into Newark. And Scott's so excited, there's tons of traffic, and he's looking, it's nighttime, and he looks up and he goes, oh my gosh, look at that, I'm gonna be talking to that city, that's New York City. And I said, honey, no, that's Newark.
I definitely remember hearing the Blackheart stuff and what it felt like to hear your song coming out of the radio. There's always I get a big kick out of it. If I hear one of our records come on, I crank it. Because that was the dream, you know, when you're a kid, is being able to be in a band, make music that other people want to hear, and actually get it played on the radio.
Serving the universe from the top of the Empire State Building.
When we made that transition on WPLJ from a pure rock station to a top 40 station.
It's time to make a change. The people are changing. Let's do it.
We were about to enter top 40's second golden age in 1983 and ready for our climb right to the top. And then, out of nowhere, came Scott Shannon.
Live from the penthouse studios of WWHTZ, the Flamethrower. It's the nearly famous, highly outrageous, but never ever contagious Z Morning Zoo. Yeah!
Along about the time I was 13 or 14, my dad was transferred to this place called Fort Benjamin Harrison, just outside of Indianapolis. And I ran into two new friends down the block, two brothers, and they had a big sister who loved music. And she had this little record box, had a handle on it, and had 45s in there. And one day we just got into it, and I said, holy crap, what is this? And it was rock and roll music. It was love at first sight, or listen. So every week I would pedal my little Schwinn bicycle down the road to this electronics store, and he had a little record section, and I would go through there and pick out one or two songs every week that a guy could afford. And then I noticed he got in some new radios, and I said, what's that right there? He says, that's a transistor radio. So I had it in my hands. I said, oh my God, I gotta have it. I can put it on layaway for you. I said, really? Yep, you give me a couple bucks every week. When you get enough money, you can have it. Finally got that radio, and I took it everywhere. I still have that radio. Then one day, one of my friends tells me about WIFE radio, the station we all listen to, Top 40 for Teenagers. They have a big window right on the street on Meridian when you're going into the city, and you can stand out there and watch the DJ work. And I'd stand there and look through that window and see the disc jockey with the headphones, the microphone, the records, the turntable. I said, holy crap. That's what I want to do.
Wait a second.
Yeah, that's
Did
real.
Scott Shannon create Z100?
That's what I'm doing the movie about. Boom, and you're in it.
Holy shit.
No, this is going to be massive, dude.
I didn't even know that.
The station was basically designed and planned to be the successor to 77 WABC, which was the huge New York radio station, and it covered half the country from the 60s. I even had a jingle cut that brought back memories of WABC. Theirs was 77 WABC. Whee! Had this little chime time at the end. And I had one made that went Z100 WHTZ. Bing! I didn't sing it that good, did I?
Z100 WHTZ.
There was nobody doing top 40 radio back in the day. WABC, which had been doing it for years and years and years, which is where I came from, was now all talk and played no music.
There were several attempts with a few stations, WXLO 99X, WWDJ in New Jersey. They did not have the brain power behind them. They were just playing records, so they failed.
There were openings for small, what at the time were small niches, Hispanic stations, for instance, niches that were not unimportant and would continue to grow as time went on. The odds of any mainstream format coming in to become a major player in the market were minuscule.
There was a segment of New York radio that had gotten lazy, that had just gotten kind of, you know, we're number one, so it's okay. There's enough money to go around for everyone. There's enough audience to go around.
I didn't like New York radio at the time. There were no real sort of adult contemporary stations at the time. Obviously, there were a couple of the greatest R&B stations in America were here. But Larry Berger and PLJ were the coup de grace, if you will, but it was soulless, it was uninspiring, and it was ready for a takeover.
So I walk into the 5th floor of the Meadowlands Hilton, and it was a beehive of activity. But what stopped me in the middle of the room, there was this giant window facing the Empire State Building, and there was this mountain of a man kind of walking back and forth, matted hair, beard, khaki shorts, biting his nails, talking to no one in particular, writing notes, scribbling things furiously. And this was Scott Shannon planning out Z100 on the Z Morning Zoo.
He got not only the soul of New York, he got the beat of New York, but he also got New Jersey, got Long Island, got Connecticut, got all the surrounding areas, not just Manhattan.
So I come up with this plan because I really don't know the 5 boroughs. Well, that's good, because there's about 10 million people in Long Island, another 8 or 9 in New Jersey, and 2 to 4 million in Westchester and Connecticut that picked up our signal. So I said, that's what I'm going to do.
He wanted to come up with music that he felt could common thread rock and rhythm and pop. And the music was unlike any other mix that any top 40 had ever done. It's at that point that I knew this was going to be something that New York radio had never seen before.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, baby, it's time to play the hitless game in the city, baby doll. I'm looking for the 100th caller.
I flew to New York City, brought me over to this hotel in Meadowlands Hilton. It was a real dark room, and I couldn't figure out why am I sitting in a room that looked like it was just dark. So he walks over and he turns the chair against this big bay window, and he goes, and he opens up this big bay window, and it was the skyline of New York City, and he goes, I'm gonna give you a microphone to talk to that.
Obviously, I knew Scott Shannon liked the song Hate Myself for Loving You. I also knew there was a possibility he would play the record, and we get this idea to send a plane with a tail over Secaucus, and the plane says, Dear Scott, play Joan Jett. First day, the guy flies over the wrong part of Secaucus, and Scott doesn't see the plane. I'm having a heart attack.
This is the room where it all started. It was, I don't know, it was a magic place to me. I remember when we first were getting ready to go on the air, I remember one day I'm standing here and I'm just looking out the window, and all of a sudden something hit me in the feet. And it was our chief engineer, Frank Foti, rolled that little dolly out, and he's on, hey, what are you doing? I said, I'm just kind of soaking up the atmosphere, man. I'm just feeling it. I said, Frank, I truly believe that radio history is going to be made in this room. He's still on his back there. He said, man, you just gave me goosebumps. He said, let me get up there and look out the history window. Before we ever even signed on the air, they were working on building the studio. And I was promised by Mr. Malwright, that it would be a Rolls-Royce radio station. So I went over to take a look at it one day, and I found out we weren't getting a Rolls-Royce. We were getting a Volkswagen. They had this fella in there, and he said, you must be the new punk, Scott Shannon. And I go, yeah, who are you? He said, well, I'm your boss. I'm the chief engineer. I went, oh, boy. And I got a hold of Jim, and I said, Jim, we got a problem here. And unless I get another engineer in here, I'm going to have to go back to Tampa. I need somebody, maybe a little hipper, a little younger, someone who understands my language. When he got through with a litany of different engineers that they had describing each one, I said, is that all you got? And he says, no, there is one more fellow. I don't know, though. He's very hard to deal with. He sits in his office and cranks The Who up at full volume all day long. Well, is there another problem? He said, well, he's a little crazy. I said, a little crazy? He said, no, he's a whole lot crazy.
I'd been told by some corporate folks, they said, you were lucky to have worked around some pretty intense people in Cleveland at WMMS, which was a station I grew up on. They said, Scott's like the people at MMS, but on steroids.
Next day, in comes Frank Foti. Oh my God, what a mess.
And I hear this voice. So I go, is that Franco? Yeah, he goes, hi, my name's Scott Shannon.
I told him, I want a radio station that pounds, that jumps out of the radio. I want a flamethrower.
The flamethrower. Z100.
He said, I'm your guy.
The best way I could sum it up is, if I may borrow a phrase from Roger Daltrey of The Who, you know, he's always talked about The Who's music as somebody punching you in the nose and saying, I love you.
It's like songs sound different on this radio station. I don't understand how, but they sound different. There's like a magic there.
From a technical standpoint, the sound of the station was booming and loud, and from an engineering standpoint, it was compressed. It just sounded really, really cool.
When my music started getting played, I was just like, oh my God, if I'm hearing this in my car right now, like millions of people are hearing it in their car too, or in their bedrooms, and it was really like this communal experience. And I guess that's why it was so magical to me. It just felt like a connectedness. And I really put everything behind that dream of being played on the radio. It was only in my dream.
I would stand right here, and then Ross Britton would be over here and have the bells and the drums and all that stuff. Claire Stevens would be back in the newsroom over there, and then she would move over here. Jonathan B. Bell would be there until the stars came in, and he had to move over next to Claire.
One of those Professor Jonathan B. Bell reports. What's going on, Professor?
Well, we got lots of things happening around town today, Scott. I had heard about Scott Shannon before I actually met him, and he had been described to me as a nutcase from Tampa, Florida, who walked around wearing shorts all the time and was somehow going to revolutionize New York radio. And I thought, you gotta be kidding.
Scott came in not knowing anything about New York City, and I think that gave him the edge. He wasn't frightened by the city and intimidated. You could tell he wasn't from these parts, and I think that's what made him stand out. He surrounded himself with a lot of caring, trusting people who not only communicated well with the audience, but they elevated him.
6:27 in the morning, it's time for Claire Stevens.
Good morning. It's 35 degrees at this hour.
Well, I must tell you, Scott Shannon meant nothing to me. I was so new in radio, and I was so naive, and I was working at this little tiny station that was kind of isolated. I got a call, and they said, we were not able to get you in Scott's office, but my wife got you on our home radio and played it over the speakerphone to Scott Shannon. How soon can you get out here? I sat in Scott's office, and he's saying, well, you'll say this, and you'll do that, and you'll blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, time out. I said, don't you want to interview anybody else? And he said, no, when I hear what I want, I know it.
Yes, Ross, Britton, and Scott, is going to be a rotten day.
Thank you very much.
I was a talk jock at WABC. I started there when they were still music. And then I was fired pretty much the week that Z100 went on the air. So I went over to Scott a couple of weeks later and I said, hey, good to see you. I'm looking for a job. I know you have an afternoon opening. And he said, nah, you're a morning jock. No, I want you to work with me.
So I get to the Meadowlands Hilton, and I'm dressed up like the former Madison Avenue person that I was. And there he is with the big voice, and he's Scott Shannon.
And I said to myself, this is a nut house, and the guy that's running the place is wearing a Hawaiian shirt and shorts.
Oh my God, what have I got myself into?
He was able to create deliberately and hilariously dysfunctional family. At the same time, it was an endearing family.
Eddie Grant was a lead singer of a group that
Supremes.
Not the Supremes, you nitwit.
Let me take you to the production office right here. This used to be the home of the late J.R. Nelson. J.R. would be here. He was a big guy. He didn't take any crap from anybody, especially me. And he had a little, like a table here. And then I would come back from lunch. I'd have a bunch of notes on the napkin that I came up with while we were having lunch and maybe a cocktail or two. And I would say, turn the mic on, J.R. Z100 wants you to help us go from worst to first. We need your help. And then he would put it to music and sound effects and all that. And then within 30 minutes, it would be on the air.
Any broadcast or duplication of this material without the expressed written consent of J.R. Nelson Productions will cost you a fortune.
With J.R. Nelson. In sports, the Lions mugged the Steelers. The Cowboys beat the Cardinals. The Giants are going to a one-back offense for the Raiders game on Sunday. And Marvis Frazier doesn't have much of a chance to beat Larry Holmes tonight, so say the experts. Z100 weather looks like this.
Now, in addition to the Morning Zoo, which was crazy enough,
The DJs here at the Z Morning Zoo are up and getting ready to entertain you.
we also had DJs named Jack the Whack,
Jack the Whack here, getting ready to go commercial free.
Hollywood Hamilton,
Radio Z100 with Hollywood Hamilton.
Dr. Christopher Reed, Janet from Another Planet, and one of the most incredible DJs I've ever heard, Shadow Steel.
Here we go. I'm Shadow. It's just about 5 o'clock. It's been a long, hot, nasty week. I think it's time we kick this sucker in the head and get out of here.
But there was one other character who was very popular. His name was Mr. Leonard.
Mr. Leonard is
No good at those.
sicker than a dog this morning.
I apologize for trying to call up and guess it. I know I'm ineligible, but I'm a desperate Scot.
He drove a lime green Pinto. He had a matching lime green leisure suit, complete with cherry red shoes.
What in the hell is Mr. Leonard doing? Leonard! Back there weaseling around. The guy comes to work. He's been in the control room one time since he's been here.
And he was like the common man while he was below the common man.
But what about 8375 on the telephone line?
No, that's Tommy Two-Tone. That was Tommy Two-Tone.
Well, who the hell is this Tommy?
The problem was he had trouble waking up in the morning and many times didn't even show up for work.
Where in the world are you? Everybody's here.
Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday
Hey,
to me.
stop all that. Where are you?
What do you mean, where am I? What's that? I thought this was a holiday. It's our birthday.
Scott was known to use the hotline. He called me one day and he said, Magic Man, there was some dead air between commercial number 3 and commercial number 4. And I said, not on this show there wasn't. I said, you must have been listening to our competition, WPLJ. He said, well, let me look at my digital. No, it says 100.3. He said, no, that's my... I said, absolutely not on this station. I said, I would never, ever commit a felony such as dead air on Z100, the biggest station in the world. And he said, yeah, I looked again. It says 10, that's Z100. Don't you f*** up my radio station. Click.
It's 8 minutes after 6 a.m., August the 2nd, 1983. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, radio station WHDZ signs on the air. WHTZ is owned and operated by Mallrite Communications Cleveland and operates on an assigned frequency of 100.3 megahertz with studios and offices in Secaucus, New Jersey. Signing on the air, this is WHTZ Newark, the new Z100. New York, it's time to wake up.
The kids were telling everybody about this great new station that was broadcasting from the top of the Empire State Building.
Serving the universe from the top of the Empire State Building. WHTZ.
Live from the top of the Empire State Building, the flame-throwing, hot rockin' Z100.
Everybody broadcast from the top of the Empire State Building. There's a master antenna on top of the Empire State Building that all the stations share the rental on. We're all there. There was nothing unique about what he was really doing, but everything unique about the way he was describing what he was doing.
Serving the universe from the top of the Empire State Building.
Well, it's true.
Every radio station comes from the top of the Empire.
They gave you the impression that they were broadcasting from high on top of the Empire State Building, but in truth, it was across the way. But that is the plight of New Jersey, right, everybody? We do all the heavy lifting and get none of the credit for it.
They made of that nothing, defy its geographic reality, and instead transfer the whole ethos to Manhattan, to the heart of Manhattan. And then not only to Manhattan, but to the Gorilla Building, to the top of the top.
We claimed the Empire State Building and everything that emanated from the Empire State Building over 27 counties in the New York metro area. Our goal was to be larger than life.
Serving the universe from the top of the Empire State Building. This is the new Z100. And then there was a little pause, and then it was Scott's way of telling other radio stations we were in town.
Get out of the way.
I couldn't believe it. This guy is crazy. He's going after other radio stations in town. He's literally calling them out and telling them to get out of the way, and here we come.
Z100 was the rebirth of that top 40 mentality. It existed on some of the AM stations, but to have an FM radio station playing all the hits, that was a novel concept at the time. And PLJ and Z100 both basically did it at the same time and created the ultimate radio war, which, for those of us who were students of it, we were all about that.
What station did we rescue you from?
CBS FM.
Oh my God.
New York radio stations had indirectly referenced other radio stations in the past. In the 60s, famously, WMCA and WABC, the good guys.
Ringing with the good guys. WMCA.
They had a great rivalry going on, but they never directly referenced each other. When Scott started calling out other radio stations on the air, particularly WPLJ, he got phone calls from people saying, "You can't do that. That's illegal. Won't the FCC fine you for doing that?" He said, "Of course they won't. It's not illegal."
We always like to take personalities from the market, not just radio, but, everybody, and make fun of them.
Could you do us a favor?
Sure.
Could you tell Roger Grimsby something for us?
All right. Get me fired.
When one of the ratings came out and Imus had fallen in the ratings, Scott offered to start a fundraising campaign to bail Imus out of his problems.
My friend Don Imus.
Yeah.
Hey, watch this.
Basically, Scott is the ultimate radio attack dog. He does his best work when he had a target. And WPLJ saw what was happening at Z100. They changed to top 40. But it was a wimpier, more corporate version of Top 40. And so Scott called them what they were, wimpy radio.
What we suddenly faced was like nothing I had ever experienced before.
We have a radio station here that used to be an album rock and roll station, and they changed their floor mat recently. And their program director, Larry Booker, had a song out. It's called We're Going Wimpy. Their new call letter is WIMP. We'll get that on right now. There's Larry and the Wimps, and We're Going Wimpy on Z100.
We did a skit about the program director of WPLJ, and Scott said, "Make it Larry Booger." And then it just went wild.
They start their tape recorder just like Larry Booger at 5:59, so they don't miss a single second of the Z100 Morning Zoo.
The name became so stuck to poor Larry Berger that all around New York, people were calling him Larry Booger.
The audience loved it. The clients, not so much.
This television station has refused to accept your commercial advertising for Z100.
And it's breaking my heart.
Is it really?
Now, there is a federal law that limits how much level you can put into the transmitter. And I know for a fact, because I measured it myself, that our competition, WPLJ, that they would break that law. It's called overmodulation. It would be like, you know, speed limit's 55 miles an hour and they want to drive 75. Okay, you guys want to drive 75? We'll drive 75. Well, Larry Berger was so competitive himself, he had the technical measuring device on his desk where he could look at Z100 and PLJ. Well, one time he was looking at his monitor, thinking we were breaking the law, and he called me. I had my assistant, Steve Pepe, go and flip some switches so that his monitor would look all crazy. He's like, Frank, I got to call you back. Something's not right here. Yeah, Larry, you're a dumbass, and I hung up on him.
So there was a writer for the Daily News in those days named George Maxian. And for whatever reason, he just wasn't a believer in Z100.
George was a great guy, but he was old school in his radio taste. He loved John Gambling. So when Scott started, he wrote a column about it in which he pronounced the new Z100 to be vulgar.
Coming home one day and opening up the Daily News and seeing this article by George Maxian saying, I hope he has a round-trip ticket back to Tampa because this guy's the worst.
That first comment says, now this podunk hillbilly from Florida, remember that?
Yeah, sure. And he would write all of these negative articles on Z100. And it would drive Scott crazy.
Take his ways back to Florida.
Yeah, it says, hope he's got a one.
To fail. This hillbilly from Tampa going to launch a concept that had worked in Tampa but hadn't worked anywhere else.
And then finally I just got mad. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll just show that idiot. And he's still that idiot.
So Scott made up these stickers that said, I break for George Maxian. So then I hear it. Kenny Lane, get in here. Go to the office, sit down, close the door. I need you to do something with these. Go figure it out. Earn while you learn, figure it out.
In a way, it was kind of cool to have so many people talking about you, even if it was bad.
So I figured maybe I can go put the stickers all over the Daily News delivery trucks.
The newspapers hated us.
I see a guy who's sitting by one of the trucks having a cigarette, and I said, excuse me, I've got some stickers here for George Maxian.
That guy's terrible.
Do you think I can put them on some of the trucks?
Other program directors hated us.
So I must have hit 20, 25 trucks.
He's a horrible disc jockey.
Now I see the door wide open, and I go in, there's a security guy sitting there, and I said, I've got a package for George Maxian, can I drop it off?
The ad agencies hated us.
I go up to the third floor, I find a couple of people who were up there working, and I said, hey, I've got a package here for George Maxian.
He doesn't sound like New York.
Would you mind pointing out his desk?
Other DJs hated us.
First I was thinking, I'm gonna put one sticker down. And then I thought, why do one? I've got a box of stickers here, I don't wanna come back with them.
Everybody made fun.
And I start putting them all over. And I know when he comes to work in the morning, he's gonna see I break for George Maxian stickers all over the office.
You know how bumper stickers are, you don't get them off as easy as you get them on.
I'll never forget when Z100 hit, because there was this moment that I said, who is this? And it was Whitney Houston. Who is this? And it was Aretha Franklin. They started playing pop music like I remember WABC, but it was more than that. It was polished, it was pure.
I wanted it to be about the music. The music was the most important part of it, and we were the conduit from the people to the music. I wanted to have the people who made the music on the radio talking about the music, and I wanted our disc jockeys to know what they were playing. Very few record promotion guys would bring us records. We had to go buy our own records at Tower Records. We couldn't get any celebrity guests on the morning show. They didn't want to come to Secaucus. They didn't know where Secaucus was. And we had an intern by the name of William Brownstein. William heard me complaining about not having any famous people on the show. He said, I can get you a guest, a famous guest. I said, William, who do you know that could possibly be famous? He said, well, because every year I volunteer for the Jerry Lewis Telethon, and here in New York, Tony hosts that, and he likes me. So Tony Orlando comes by. He's our very first guest on Z100.
I walk in, and there's this energetic, unbelievable young man introducing me to someone who I already knew. I knew Scott from being on the road when I had Candida out. He was the first person to ever play a Dawn record. Oh my God, Scott, well, come on, let's do the interview.
Whether it was an artist or an author or an athlete, they would stop at MTV. They would stop at the Today Show. They would stop at Good Morning America. He and I sat down and we decided that Z100 has to become a destination for all things music.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. James Brown. Good morning, Mr. Brown. Ow!
Z100 really was a major factor in what was really a renaissance, in a sense, of a musical culture in the city, 83, 84, 85, in the mid-80s then. It was a catalyst. You had this great music going on, but Z100 brought it together in a way, in a form, in a package that others had not.
I have met a number of radio guys in my career who their attitude was, I don't care. Is it a hit? Is it not a hit? Is my listener going to care? Because I don't care. You know, and that would break your heart because you work so hard to write a song, record a song, promote a song, and you go out there and the attitude was like, well, it doesn't matter to me. It's all widgets. So you needed guys that loved music.
You know, he loves the music, and it doesn't have to be rock and roll, but he gets the rock and roll thing.
He played new music, he played hit music, and he would fall in love with songs and play them no matter what the chart position was at any given time, which was unique.
When you're really using the phrase to be a great radio person, love of music allows you to be different, to not be totally predictable, and for that contagious spirit to come through.
One of the most amazing things for me is to remember the people that walk through our hallways. And these people got up really early in the morning and they came to see Caucus.
And I was promoting Johnny Dangerously or Wise Guys, one of the films. Would you go on This Morning Zoo? Would you go on with Scott Shannon? I said, are you kidding me? This guy wrote the book.
Oh my God, I got through. Finally, my first time.
Oh, how do you like that? Oh, it's your first time. I'm so excited.
Stations like Z100 made me feel like I had the freedom to do really experimental projects. And if we somehow nailed it, that it would wind up on Z100. We didn't try to say, oh, let's make a Z100 record. Let's make a record from our hearts that we think is really cool. And if they think it's cool, home free.
With Z100, when those DJs and they got behind it, and when people were pulling for you and pushing, and the radio was on fire for you, you just never got higher. Everybody was in it together. It was a beautiful feeling. It took top 40, top 20 music and turned it into a lifestyle, you know? It became a brand. It was really interesting. It was a marvelous time to be on radio and to break.
You know, you're looking for signs. Do I have a hit record? Do I have a record that is not just going to be a local or regional hit, but do I have a record that's a national hit that likely can go, let's say, to the top 10 of the charts, so that in memory, it's hard to think of a more important ad than Z100, which says to you, okay, you have a hit record.
When it came to my career, you know, when I started to pay attention, in essence, when I was born in 1983, that's when I would pay attention to what a radio station meant from a business standpoint, not just a kid with his ear to the speaker. And so the reach of Z100 was felt from coast to coast.
It was a tough ad to get, but if you got it and it went on the radio and it worked, it was exciting. And it was more exciting because it wasn't cookie cutter, all of the same sound. It wasn't all rock or or pop rock or dance. It was the best of the best.
If you were an artist and you know that you wound up on the Z100 playlist, because that's what we all wanted to do. We want to cross over, because crossover means that the person that you don't expect to love your music loves your music. And I don't care what people say. If they tell you something other than this, they are lying. They are lying. They are lying.
One of my fondest memories of going up to visit with the morning crew was a Christmas special, and I was in a sweater and a scarf, and Michael Damian, who's still a friend to this day, was up there, and he was wearing a hat, a black round bowler hat, and I said, "Oh, I love hats, can I try that on?" And took the hat off his head, put it on, walked out with it. That was the black hat that you've seen throughout my entire career. It was given to me by Michael Damian on the Z100 morning show with Scott and the crew.
We signed on the air in New York, a brand new radio station, a little bitty radio station that wanted to go from worst to first.
So the next morning, I get up, I go to work.
He just went nuts.
I don't say a word to the members of the zoo. Long about 8 o'clock, I pull out that Associated Press list of radio stations, just rolled up. I unroll it like this, all the way down to the ground, and I'm gonna read them on the air.
He was reaming out the entire team. You know, this is not working. We got to raise our game. We might as well just pack up our things and leave and let the station go to dead air.
I started reading from number 1, and I get down to 20. I said, no Z100, and guess what? We're number 51. I came here from Tampa, Florida to build a great radio station, and guess what? We suck.
In the background, you hear the little Saturday Night Live, Debbie Downer sound effects.
I almost fell out of my chair. No one ever says that. No one ever says you're doing poorly in radio.
We are going to build a great radio station, and I'm talking to you, the listeners. You have to get on board and help us.
He recruited the audience to build our audience.
You know, that's a genius.
Scott said, send in your name and the name of 25 of your friends that you have turned on to Z100.
Let people know that the station is on. Take out an old sheet, get a magic marker, write Z100 on it, and hang it out your window in Brooklyn, the Bronx, Staten Island, Long Island, wherever you are. We need your help.
People would hang signs out their windows, and people were wearing their Z-shirts. If they had jackets, they had pins on them, you know, for the station.
They became our advertising agency.
Take a piece of paper, make a homemade bumper sticker, put it in the rear window. I listen to Z100. I want our listeners to be a part of our trip.
We're going to play more music. We're going to play better. We're going to give away the most money.
You could win $20,000, $25,000, $30,000.
We will build a great radio station. I promise you. I guarantee you it's going to happen.
And then you hear the little Rocky music coming up.
We're going from worst to first. Nothing's going to stop us.
So he got the audience on our side, made us the underdog.
And long about that time, I noticed Claire had already evacuated the room. She was scared. She thought I was having a heart attack or something. John Bell says your muscles in your neck are all stuck out. You okay? You need me to call a doctor? I said, we're going to be fine. We just have to go from worst to first.
We're going from worst to first.
And then he told all of us, take a case of Z100 t-shirts, put it in the trunk of your car, and every time you see somebody walking by with one of those worst to first signs, give them a t-shirt. I drove through streets of New York and saw people hanging sheets out of office buildings. Z100, worst to first.
We built that up step by step by running contests.
Birthday cash, $1,000 all day long. You're the second winner today.
And being at everything that went on in New York City, you saw the Z100 van.
We're on 54th and Avenue of the Americas, passing out tons and tons of T-shirts, hats, buttons, and more.
The fact that it grew at this lightning pace was a remarkable tribute to, you know, viral growth at the time when there was no viral.
This could have been the first viral campaign 10 years before the internet even was invented.
It showed a sense of determination
a sense of ambition, and people always root for the little guy. It's just human nature. It's the Rocky movie. That's exactly what Z100 was.
Here is this new station, and we were doing something nobody else was doing. This hodgepodge of people and personalities that nobody had ever heard of, who were suddenly challenging the monsters of New York radio.
And it wasn't just us. It was the power of the people who loved that radio station. A great radio station has emotion, it has a soul. And that day, that radio station got that effing soul.
It was a rant. It was, and I'm sure, a calculated rant, of course.
And next time the book came out...
What I have here are the advanced ratings, and this envelope, hot off the presses, has been hermetically sealed in a mayonnaise jar on Funkin' Wagnall's front porch. Okay, here's the scoop. They did it. They went from worst to first.
Scott Shannon's next up here.
That's right. He's going to tell us how his station went from worst to first.
Scott Shannon's Morning Zoo took the station from worst to first in 74 days.
And in that short time, lived up to its slogan, from worst to first.
And took the station from worst to first.
After the 74 days, we had caught the market flat-footed. We had run over everybody. These were wonderful radio companies. This was Infinity, this was Doubleday, this was CBS, ABC, NBC, Westinghouse.
I had a test. I called it the Ray's Pizza Test. There was an old Ray's Pizza, which is now closed, on 6th Avenue and 11th Street. They always had WKTU on. All of a sudden, sure enough, I went into Ray's Pizza and I heard Z100. And I knew that was an indicator. They found us, that we were passing the Ray's Pizza test. We were on our way.
They started at the very bottom of the barrel, and it was like lightning. Z100 became the biggest thing in New York radio and therefore around the world.
That is Scott's marketing genius.
I obviously was popular in Tampa and was on TV and in the newspaper and all that, but nothing could have prepared me for what hit me when we got to first place in New York.
They're the hottest duo on your radio dial. Joining us now are the Wizards of the...
All a blur to me. I mean, one minute I'm flying into Chicago to be on Oprah, and the next minute I got Good Morning America in the studio with us, cameras everywhere.
The Zoo is a Molotov cocktail of call-ins, characters, contests, a lot of clowning, and of course the top 40 chart busters. It is the #1 radio show in the nation, and we join Zoo crew DJs Scott Shannon and Ross Britton in the Z100 control room and live on the air. Hi, guys.
10 minutes after 8 o'clock in the morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm just fine. How are you guys?
I did Regis' show probably 10 times. I was on with Geraldo Rivera. I was absolutely blindsided by all that. I mean, I was on the cover of New York Magazine. The guy sat me down and did like 5 pages on me. There's not 5 pages in me. That's not why I got into radio. I got into radio because I love turning the microphone on. I love putting the headphones on and talking to people.
Wait a minute. Good morning, Z100. Guess what?
You've got $1,000.
I can't believe it.
It's our birthday, but you got the present.
I love that part of it. That kid is still there in me. I still feel that way when I get up in the morning. I can't wait to get to work.
I love Scott. He's always been really wonderful to me and very friendly to me, and you know, but always wanted me to do that shtick stuff, but, you know, Scott, I like my rock and roll serious.
There's a reason people are switching to Z100, because we're serious.
My mother will never, ever speak to me. This is...
Hello.
One of the brilliant things about Scott Shannon and the Morning Zoo was his ability to ferret out of pop culture what was the hippest thing happening. He saw where the trends were.
One day, our music director came in and said, there's a lady out front who won't go away. She comes every Tuesday, and she insists that we have to play her record.
Feels like I'm going to lose.
Madonna used to call us on a regular basis. She was not Madonna then. She was just a woman who was trying to get her record played.
So I quizzed him. I said, is anybody else playing it? No, but she says it's big in the clubs. I said, well, this isn't a club, it's a radio station. He said, she's very insistent. She wants to see you now.
She would say to Scott that if you play my music now, I will do something special for Z100 when I'm a star.
So I said to her, if we play your record at night a couple of times, will you stay home next week? You don't have to come back, right? She said, right. And she said, I promise I'll make it up to you. Now, that particular song was called Holiday. We put it on at night. It got a couple of phone calls. I think it was her calling. And so we moved it to daytime, and it became a pretty big hit for us.
Madonna decided to be a movie star with a soundtrack, obviously. The name of the movie and the name of the single was Who's That Girl? We make a deal with Madonna that the world premiere of the movie in Times Square will air on Z100 live.
On the way to the Madonna appearance in Times Square with a rabid audience of about 20,000 people, I'm sitting there with Scott Shannon, just him and I in the limo. He insists I wear the Z100 t-shirt. I was all dressed up. I had the blazer. I thought I was looking pretty good. We fought all the way there. I ended up wearing his shirt.
We had like 10, 12,000 people gathered together in Times Square. They built a big stage up there. They had like 50 or 60 photographers and videographers down in the bullpen in front. People hanging out of windows all up and down the street. Madonna fans as far as you could see. She arrived in a limousine, jumped up on stage in a beautiful gown, and welcomed everybody. Told the whole story of how she arrived in New York for the very first time.
10 summers ago, I made my first trip to New York City, my first plane ride, my first cab ride, and I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know a soul, and I asked the taxi cab driver to drop me off in the middle of everything. So he dropped me off in Times Square. 10 years later, I'm standing in the middle of Times Square looking at all the people. And I'm completely awestruck. Thank you for coming, and I hope you love the movie.
It was one of the best days in the history of the station.
You started broadcasting from the top of the Empire State Building, and now Z100's heard all around the world. That's something.
Just what I do. I mean, that's my job. My job is to build radio stations and to do radio. And ever since I was a kid, that's what I wanted to do. And, you know, it just comes with the territory.
The Z100 New York Morning Zoo with Scott and Ross. The last time around.
The 2019 iHeartRadio Jingle Ball, the biggest holiday music event of the year.
The alarm clock's ringing my head. My body's still screaming, it's a dead.
I mean, the legacy of Z100 from inception was David and Goliath.
Scott set a tone. He set an image that transcended hipness, and he was just being himself.
Scott Shannon is probably the best program director in the United States of America, as well as being one of the finest air personalities in the world.
New York is a place where radio personalities are bigger than the music they're playing. For me, you know, he'll always be one of those guys. Giant.
Scott had these incredible personal relationships. He made it a point. Don't just play the song. Get to know the person, you know? What's making that person tick? It really sets the tone for the radio world.
He created something that could keep going, that Elvis could come and continue that legacy and create something a little different and continue that. We've all seen those, whether it's shows, whether it's radio or television or whatever, that has a quick rise and a quick fall. Didn't happen with Z100. You're talking about almost 40 years.
Scott was
a renegade, an outlier who just had it right here in his gut.
How do we hold hands and win together? And that was what Scott solicited from everybody.
We may not have agreed on everything, but at the end of the day, the amazing thing that happened was that the right thing came out of the center.
Z100 was more than just a radio station. There was something about what was being broadcast over that radio frequency that united millions of people.
When I walk down the hall and look in the window at the radio station that used to be my dreaded enemy and is now among my best friends, and I see that group of people, I understand that Scott Shannon's influence is still very much there.
Understanding your audience, who's listening, what do they want to hear, what do they not want to hear? And that was always the importance with Scott and his reign at Z100, and it's definitely the importance with us. We've got to keep an eye on where we're going. We have to listen, we have to learn.
Z100 is New York City. It just always has been, and it always will be.
Serving the universe from the top of the Empire State Building. Z100, the flamethrower.
Well, the alarm clock's ringing my head. My body's still screaming, it's a dead. When you can't get to sleep, it's so rough. Getting up in the morning, so tough, so tough. Well, I'm cutting myself when I shave, and my hair won't even behave. There's only one thing left for me to do. Crank it up to the Z100 Zoo. Good morning.